Welcome to the GenX Experience, the podcast that celebrates the unique journey of 80s kids navigating midlife. I'm your host, Blythe Alperin. Each episode, my guests and I will share with you the unique differences that define our generation and how we are navigating those differences in the real world. Join me for laughs, insights, and a sense of community. Let's embrace the GenX Experience together. Picture it, Sicily, 1922. We had to walk uphill to school and uphill on the way home. Hello, welcome back to the GenX Experience. Today we have a solo episode. You get just me. Aren't you so lucky? And for those of you who are watching, yes, it is casual Tuesday, Monday, whatever day it is. It's all about casual because it's cold outside. So today we are going, as I sort of hinted, we are going back in time to talk about productivity, New Year's resolutions, motivation as a Gen X kid. What exactly did we do to stay motivated? How did we stay productive and organized? And did we really make New Year's resolutions? Honestly, I feel like we did. I don't remember any of mine. I think we would just make one. I don't know. No one ever did them. So did we ever follow through? Probably not. So let's talk about how we stayed motivated, especially when we were like in elementary school. We got stickers, right? If you did a good job, you got a sticker. Scratch and sniff. The popcorn one, I can still remember it. That's not how popcorn smelled. The fruit one smelled a lot better. But you would get a sticker. You would get to go buy stickers. We all had sticker books. I remember my sister and brother and I found ours. I don't even think we have it anymore. But there were Garbage Pail Kids in there and Strawberry Shortcake and the Scratch and Sniff. And yes, because we had to collect those stickers. But yeah, when we were elementary school, we got stickers, or there was like the, spelling champ or math champ of the week. I was spelling champ a lot because that's my MO. I worked very hard to be math champ. I remember, I think it was in 4th grade. I was determined to win math champ. So I had my mother work with me to learn multiplication tables. And I think it was like 7 times 7, 49. Like that's how I won. So yeah, we got things like that. We would get, if we did the reading challenge, the book it challenge, we would get stickers, little stars on your little pin. And then if you completed that, you got to go to Pizza Hut and get a free personal pan pizza, which was very exciting back in the 80s. We had field day where you would get to win a ribbon. We had awards at the end of the year where people get rewarded for having, no absences, for being a leader, for getting good grades. We had incentives. We had allowance. Our parents were like, well, if you get good grades, maybe you get this, or we'll take you to that. So we definitely had things as kids that could help push us a little bit. But what happened when we went to junior high and high school? That fun, that gamification went out the window. And as Gen Xers, we were very self-sufficient and we had to do our homework and we kind of had to do our chores and we had to take care of things. And we were latchkey kids because our parents, for most of us, both parents were working. So we were responsible for making sure that we got our stuff done. Our parents, they would ask us, I will say, if you weren't one of the good kids, right, your parents would ask you. In my house, our job was to do our homework and to get good grades. That was our job. If you did not do that job, the consequences were not great. And I know that we talk about Gen X as our parents didn't care, but they did care, right? They may not be sitting there with you doing your homework, although my mom definitely would quiz us on spelling and check and everything. She was really good about that. She said she went to school 4 times, once for herself and then 3 times after that. So your parents would help you, sometimes begrudgingly. My dad helped us with our science projects, which usually meant he kind of came up with them and did them. So, but when we got a little bit older, the incentives for being motivated and productive really weren't there. I mean, they still had award shows or like award, programs at the end of the year, but there was no stickers. There was no incentive, except to get good grades and maybe get on the, the honor roll or the principal's, list or something like that. But it stopped being where we had any kind of gamification, as my guest talked about in the previous podcast. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen. To make it more fun, to make being productive, make staying motivated a game. I'm not a huge fan of like board games and card games and such, but I loved stickers, and I am kind of competitive, mostly with myself. But it's just so interesting because also like we had to learn how to be creative on our own, right? Our parents sent us outside. A lot of times we were playing by ourselves, like with our friends, or we were at home. And we got to use our imagination. I remember my sister and brother and I doing like restaurant, right? Because we had to cook dinner. So sometimes we make it fun where I'm sure our parents were like, please kill me. I'm so tired for working. I just want to sit down and eat. But we would do this whole thing. We tried to make it nice and fancy and fun. And, we would play like news program. We would play bank. We would do these things. We would dress up in our like parents' clothes, and my mom had a box of costume jewelry. We had to use our imaginations, and that was a way to stay, inspired and motivated. And I think it helped us to figure out what we wanted to do when we grew up. I mean, I was obsessed with shells and like sea life. I grew up right on the water. I had an entire like cooler full of shells, and I had a book that had to be hundreds of pages, and I would sit outside like in this indoor patio that we had, and I would go through my shells and I would clean them and I would look them up and I would analyze them and organize them. And I wanted to be a marine biologist when I grew up. That did not happen because I found out later I couldn't die because of childhood asthma. But our imaginations and being outside and playing with our friends and not having technology besides like Speak and Spell and Simon in operation, we didn't have that. And like TV, we weren't allowed to watch TV for hours and hours and hours, and there really wasn't that much on. So you went outside, you played, or you played inside, you listened to music, you used your imagination to inspire you and to motivate you and to entertain you. I think you could say like our mixtapes later were also a use of motivation because we put a lot of effort, right? You put a thought into which songs to pick and how the order they were going to be. But there wasn't that like, inspiration or like incentive to really do what we were supposed to do. It's just we were supposed to do it. Like if you didn't do your homework, if you misbehaved in school, you were going to get detention or suspension. You were going to go to the principal's office. Your parents were going to get yelled, called to school, and you were going to get in trouble. Unlike today, for the most part, if your parents had to come to school, you were in so much trouble because you were inconveniencing them because they had to take time off work and you were being disrespectful. And, despite our parents with the whole Gen X kids should be seen and not heard, we knew that you better be respectful to adults. I mean, I'm 50 years old and there are still people in my life that now that I'm an adult, I should be able to call by their first name. I cannot. My baton teacher, Mrs. Dillow, I cannot call, she's like, call me Beverly. I cannot call her that. I cannot do it. Some of my friends' parents' name, I cannot call them by their first name. And if I do, it gives me the worst. I'm like, I'm being so disrespectful. So, we learned the value of respect, and that was kind of our motivation to get our shit done or we were going to get in trouble. And it wasn't so much because it was the two-part, right? You're inconveniencing your parents and you're being disrespectful, and that was just not a thing that we were supposed to do. So you had to figure out a way to be motivated. And I think once we got a little bit old, like it was like, well, if you don't get good grades, you're not going to get into the best classes. You're not going to get in the advanced classes. If you don't do this, then you're not going to get into college, right? And so there was all this pressure. Granted, getting into college now, oh my Lord. My friends and family, we all said, like, we'll talk about, like, could we have gotten into college back? Like, if we had to do it now, maybe not. And all of us, for the most part, a lot of us were like, we had good grades and extracurriculars and good scores. And yeah, but who knows? So I do feel bad for kids in that way. But that was our incentive, right? If you wanted to have a future, you needed to do a good job. And your reward was going to college. Like, okay. Right. Or maybe it was like, if you got good grades, you got to go to that football game. You got to go to your friend's house. You weren't grounded. You didn't have to go to summer school. Because that was like looked down on, right? If you went to summer school, unless you were going for gym. I don't know if you guys had that in your school, but my sister and I, we took summer school so that we didn't have to do gym in like sophomore and junior year, because nobody wanted to get all dressed up to go to school, to go to gym, to get sweaty, to take a shower. No, we weren't doing that. So it was an interesting time. And I do think that now, as we're adults, we probably do struggle, some of us, with like motivation, inspiration, procrastination, perfectionism. I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist, because when I was younger, I always thought if it's not done perfect, it's not right. Now I realize, like, done is better than perfect. Nothing is perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And sometimes you just have to hit that send button. Sometimes you just have to close that book. Sometimes you just have to be like, okay, that's it. I did it. Okay. And whatever happens, happens. Trying to stay organized. And what did we do as kids? What did we have? We had our Trapper Keepers that had folders in them, and the little, vinyl pack where you could keep your pencils. We had the pencil box. We kept, our pencils and erasers and markers and things, and color pencils and compass and things that we needed to have. When we got older, in like junior high and high school, we had like the book covers, and you would design them so you knew which book, and you had different folders and binders for each thing, and you tried to keep it organized. And, there was always those kids who didn't have that, and their backpack was just like a mess. But that's what we did. And we sort of had to figure things out for ourselves a lot. We had some instruction, So I look back at those days of, when we were procrastinating and like getting in trouble for procrastinating. Oh, your parents, you always wait till the last minute, which some of us did. But really, I think now we find out that a lot of times that's because we feel that overwhelm, right? Like, I know when I felt my perfectionist tendency, I'm like, oh, I can only do it when I'm motivated, right? Like, I have to be in the zone to write because I'm a writer. It's going to be wrong. I don't know what to do. And you get so overwhelmed, and then you're like, okay, I don't know. I don't know where to start. Like today, I started a new calendar, and I literally went into Canva, and I'll show it from like a little design, and I'm testing out a new calendar with kind of themed days, but I wrote down like what I do on those days and how much time I want to spend on it. And I can move the days around if I need to, but it's all about using your imagination. Yeah, I had to use my imagination, and I don't get stickers. But you do hear now people talking about what is a reward you can give yourself for accomplishing your goals. And that's back to what we got as kids, right? Like, you would get a special treat if you did your homework sometimes, if you did good on a test, or sometimes, a lot of times your parents are like, okay, good job. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get an A. I don't know why you think you need to be rewarded for that. Now, if you got all A's at the end of the quarter, or the end of the 9 weeks, you might get something, or the end of the year. But we weren't getting participation trophies and little awards, if we did one thing good. You had to do a lot of things good. If you didn't do your chores, you weren't getting an allowance. And there were chores that you did that didn't require, you weren't getting an allowance anyways. That you lived in the house, you made it a mess, you had to do those things, which we all complained about. But guess what? We're all capable of doing our laundry and cooking for the most part, most people, and doing the dishes and being adults. Our parents were trying to prepare us for adulting, yet I don't know about you, but once I actually was adulting, I would like my money back. I would like to take the contract that I don't remember signing and rip it up or amend it, because this adulting is a bunch of BS and I'm tired and there's way too much that we have to do. So now I know when my sister and brother and I used to joke that my parents had kids so they didn't have to do chores. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason. I think that's what boomers and silent gen decided. That like, we have children because we're supposed to, and also because I don't want to do the dishes. I don't want to take the garbage out. I don't want to cook. I don't want to do all these things. That's what my children are for. So yeah, child labor. It's a thing. And a lot of times we weren't getting, paid for it. But the joys of using our imagination and, building forts and playing games and playing the sprinklers and, jump rope and making up games and claps and different little things and drawing with chalk and really coming up with ways to, do things with our imagination and sitting around and listening to music. I do miss that, right? Where you would get a record, later a CD or a cassette, and you would just sit there and listen to every song and pore over the lyrics and spend hours doing that. I never do that anymore. I'll listen to music, but do I listen like a whole album? No, I have like playlists. So we learned all these things. We did all these things to feel inspired and entertained and motivated. And somehow I feel like we lost that a little bit. I still don't make New Year's resolutions. I think they're ridiculous, but I do make goals. And I do quarterly goals because that's more manageable and realistic. And then I will write down the steps to achieve those goals. And I'm also not hard on myself if I don't make that, because sometimes things happen, plans change, ideas change. But I think it's nice sometimes to sit back and think about what we did as kids to make doing our chores, doing our homework, and doing the things we were supposed to do fun and entertaining. And yes, we listened to music while we did our homework. Yes, we watched TV while we did our homework. If my mother only knew that we would come home, call her, and then start our homework with the TV on. Or sometimes we would take a little bike trip up to Circle K and buy a bunch of junk food because we were not allowed to have that. I grew up in a house, orthodontist, dental hygienist. Or once I started driving, we would make little stops to get junk food that we weren't allowed to have. So, but I think we need to put the gamification back in goal setting and productivity and motivation and see what we can do to, find the fun. Like if you have to clean your house, put some music on, put an old album on that you loved, Prince, Wham, Depeche Mode, NXS, Go-Go's, Nirvana, whatever it is, New Order, Def Leppard, whatever, put it on and clean your house, maybe a different album for every room. When you have to balance do anybody balance your checkbook? When you have to do some work, put some music on, listen to a podcast, go sit somewhere different, go outside if it's not freezing. Set a timer. I started doing that. There's the Pomodoro method, which I think is 50 minutes. Set a timer, be like, okay, I'm going to work on this for 30 minutes. And then you make it a game. Like, can I finish this in 30 minutes? Because we would do that, right? We're like, okay, how long can you sit here? How long can you do this? Make it a game. And then bring out the child in you. Use your imagination. Because it's what's the beauty of being a kid from the 70s and 80s and 90s is that we didn't have access to the internet for a very long time. And even when we did, it was like, that's the song, the noise, and waiting forever for things to download. We had to go to we wanted to watch a movie, you had to go to the theater, or you had to go to Blockbuster, which I still miss Blockbuster or video stores. One of my favorite things to do was to, like, on the way home from like work when I was, in my like 20s and 30s, I would stop at there was like a video store by the train. I think it was Blockbuster. And I would peruse the aisles, and I loved indie films because they were so good. And I would rent myself some indie films, and just, it was like my favorite thing to do. It was like my treat when I didn't want to go out on a Friday night. So do that. Watch an old movie. Tell yourself, if I finish this task, I get to do this. If I finish this, I get to do that. Write down your to-do list. Like, think about what is achievable and what is not, and how you can make it fun. And realize that there's a book is it 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman? And when you think about that term, you're like, okay, basically we have like 4,000 weeks on average, give or take, to live, right? And so you're never going to get everything done on your to-do list. You're never going to go everywhere. Like, you're not going to do everything. So you have to make it more manageable and think about, what is the most important things to me that I want to accomplish? What will I be really disappointed at the end of my life if I don't? Like, if you want to travel and you haven't, start doing it. If you want to like learn pickleball, learn pickleball. If you want to start reading more classics, read more classics. Just realize what is important to you and do that, and make it fun, because the world is a stressful, scary place right now, especially if you live in the US. There are things going on. January felt like 5 million years. There are things going on. Flying is starting to freak me out. There's just all kinds of uncertainty, and you have to find a way to ignore that sometimes and realize that, life is short and you never know what's going to happen. So you got to enjoy it. And yes, you still have to be an adult. Yep. I mean, how many of us, right, when you were kids, were you like me, where you're like, I can't wait till I grow up. I can't wait till I grow up. I can't wait till I'm an adult and I can do whatever I want. And then you become an adult and you're like, I'm sorry. What did I just say I wanted to be? Can I go back to being a kid where it was fun and easy and the weight of the world wasn't on my shoulders, and I wasn't responsible for my bills and taking care of my children and taking care of myself and taking care of my pets and doing all the things that I'm supposed to do that sometimes you just don't want to. And also make time for rest, right? Remember when we were little, preschool, kindergarten, you had to take naps, and sometimes you didn't want to take the nap. But now, take a nap. If you want to take a nap and you're feeling tired, take a nap. If you want to do nothing on Sunday, lazy Sunday, do nothing on Sunday. And then when you go back to work and you're like, what did you do this week? And be like, I did absolutely nothing, and it was everything I hoped it would be. Because there is an importance to rest. It refuels us. It motivates us. And, we got to do it as kids. So, yeah. Maybe find your old trapper keeper. Maybe that's something you do. Maybe you make a chore chart. Maybe you learn how to speak English. Maybe you do buy yourself stickers and use that as an incentive. Find something that brings you joy and motivates you, and don't be hard on yourself. Procrastination, it happens to the best of us. Being a perfectionist, try to let it go. Because, done is better than perfect. Just like this podcast. This is my passion project. And sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's meandering and wandering. And as long as I'm enjoying it, and hopefully you are too, then we are there. So take some time. My advice for you, my task for you today is sit down and think about and reminisce, what are the things that inspired you and motivated you when you were a kid? How did you achieve your goals? How can you make it more fun to be an adult? And I'd love to hear what you come up with. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at the GenX Experience Podcast. Of course, this will be in the show notes. Don't forget, we now have a YouTube channel. And so you can watch this or listen to it. It does both. That may change if I don't change things up, figure it out, be sure to subscribe and follow us on YouTube. We're also, of course, on Apple and Spotify. On Spotify, you can also watch this on video. Be sure to rate the podcast. On Spotify, you just have to click the stars. On Apple, you can do that or leave a review. Anything you can do to help the podcast. Be sure to share it with your favorite Gen Xers. If you have suggestions for episodes or you want to be a guest, just check everything out in the show notes. It's always there. And until next time, which will be in March, where we are going to talk about solo traveling. I'm going to share my experience and get to talk to Wild Terrains, which is the company that I went to Portugal with. There might be a bonus episode, another episode. I'd love to get a guy's perspective on solo traveling. So we will see. But stay tuned for that. We have content already lined up for April and May. We're going to talk about ageism. We're going to talk about, budgeting and finances and stuff as a Gen Xer. Because even though we took classes, right? Remember that they would teach you how to write a check and do certain things. Not always prepared to figure out the best way. So we're going to talk to people on that. So I'm going to finish this podcast the way I do every podcast. Until next time, my fellow Gen Xers, don't you forget about me, because I won't forget about you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Gen X Experience. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it on social media or with a friend. We'll see you back here next time.